Good morning, Gplex. It is a pleasure to be here with some esteemed colleagues and friends. Let me first give a really big thank you to Jeff Hornstein and his team for putting together uh, uh, you know, uh, such a dynamic group of experts and just a great Gplex experience. We are going to jump right in with introductions. My name is Malik Brown. I am the Executive Director of Graduate Philadelphia. Graduate serves at the intersection of degree attainment and workforce preparation, and we work at a systems level with a number of regional stakeholders to ensure that the most vulnerable in our society have an opportunity to participate more fully in our economy through educational attainment. With that brief introduction, I'm going to ask my esteemed colleagues and guests to introduce themselves briefly, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. So if I can have Sheila, Dan, and Shirley in that rotation, quickly introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I am Sheila Ireland, and I serve as the Deputy Secretary of Workforce Development for the Department of L&I, Labor and Industry, for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I guess the shorthand for that is my deputy runs Pennsylvania's public workforce development system and manages all of the federal and state dollars that flow to Pennsylvania.
Great. Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Rhoton from HopeWorks. We help young people in Camden and Philadelphia transform their lives by training them in technology, employing them in our technology businesses, and then watching them become part of the workforce and grow. Really excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Shirley Moy. I'm the Executive Director of Temple University's LendFest North Philadelphia Workforce Initiative, which is supported by both Temple University and the LendFest Foundation. And we take really a place-based approach to workforce development that involves collaboration with over 20 different partners that do a university community partnership around workforce development, education, and empowerment.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sheila, Dan, and Shirley, for being here. To my Gplex colleagues, you are in for a real treat. These are the very best of the best. These are your ninja warriors when it comes to workforce development and education, and you're in for a real treat. I am honored to be here to learn from them, quite frankly, and to help guide this conversation. So let's jump right in. Sheila, I wanted to ask you if you can kind of help ground us today. I know that we've thrown out a lot of words like workforce equity, and we're a part of this sort of workforce equity track. And we know that the space of workforce development is really broad. Can you just help ground us in what is workforce development, and how does it intersect with education and the other sort of disciplines that inform your work and inform the work of Dan and Shirley?
hmm so oftentimes I'm asked that question very specifically because it's workforce has become sort of a panacea for everything that is going on when people are disconnected from employment, right? Either long term or short term. And, I like to clarify what I mean when I talk about workforce, right? So, as you know, Malik, right, I've run HR training, organizational development, workforce development organizations, and now an agency, right? And for me, it has always been this core piece of, are you connecting people to work? I think the confusion becomes is that the folks that we serve sometimes have multiple barriers to work, but most people do. And so I think sometimes the conversation conflates mitigation of barriers with actually connecting people to work. And for me, workforce development is at the end of the day, are you employed in a profession that, in an ideal world, right, honors and respects your talents and ambitions? Is that what we're doing? And so what it does is it really narrows the focus, allows us to be very intentional around the metrics that we are engaging with, what we are focused on as a performance outcome, and how we can effectively get people back to work. That's very different from some of the conversations that we have around housing or childcare or transportation. And don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I think it is important to mitigate barriers for people to effectively connect to work, but workforce development is about that actual connection to work.
Awesome.
And I think I see some nodding. So
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Thank you for grounding us, Sheila. I really appreciate that. I think you're certainly going to provoke some thought with our other G-plexers, and
Mhm.
hopefully folks can push our assumptions a little bit. Dan, I want to throw it over to you. Sheila gave us a nice grounding on really, the idea of just connecting people to work, right? At the heart of workforce development. And we know that prior to COVID-19, we know that a lot of our communities that we serve are already hurting. And we know that after COVID and the economic implications that came with COVID, that folks are hurting even more. So if you can talk a little bit about, Dan, Philadelphia's most vulnerable workers, and how do we keep them at the center of our economic response in the city?
Yeah, and I think one thing we've learned at HopeWorks when we're talking about vulnerable populations or young people that traditionally people say things like, oh, they're hard to employ. What we're learning and COVID is showing us is something we kind of already knew, which is some of the things we've been told about why you can't employ people or why this population is hard to employ isn't true.
Mm.
Suddenly, when you can work remotely, our young people at HopeWorks are getting placements at tech firms in the suburbs, right? Suddenly, when it's about getting the work done quickly and effectively, suddenly that BA in art history isn't as important for that job as a tech company as when it was a requirement before.
Mm.
And I think what we need to stay laser focused on if we really want to help not just our vulnerable populations, because let's be real, to help Philadelphia and the region, because that's who lives here, right? Is what we need to do is be very clear about, and Sheila, I'm so glad you said about how getting folks to work means. It doesn't mean getting someone an industry credential. It doesn't mean having them complete a class. It doesn't mean that us workforce folks try hard. It means someone walks in the door and gets what they need to get employed. And that means holding workforce organizations like HopeWorks accountable to that result. There's only one result that comes out of HopeWorks: young person, living wage job.
Mm.
Everything else is salad dressing. And it also means holding employers. I'm excited about all the diversity plans, and I'm really excited about the roadmaps. But what's better than looking at a roadmap to get somewhere is to get in the car and start driving.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I think that is how we do it. Is how do we do it? We do it. And we're going to have wrong turns. The car's going to break down, right? Things aren't going to go well. But if we're looking at the map 3 months from now, instead of driving, we'll have failed a lot of people, and not just our most vulnerable populations or whatever piece of jargon you want to describe, but we'll have failed the region. And I just think that's really important to keep in mind.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And Dan, I
Absolutely.
love your point about when we sort of throw around this word of disconnected populations or vulnerable populations. I think sometimes we do a lot of othering, and we
Right.
forget that, actually it's folks in all races, all classes, all different industries that have been, quite frankly, impacted by this pandemic. Certainly some more than others. But certainly this pandemic and the economic implications of this pandemic has hurt a lot of people across sectors and across socioeconomics. And I love your point about it's not just helping those populations, it's helping the city of Philadelphia, it's helping the region. So I really appreciate that point. Shirley, I'm going to turn to you and ask you a little bit about automation, Shirley, and we know that we've been talking as a workforce community, as an education community for years about automation, and we know that with COVID it has only accelerated sort of the digital transformation that we're seeing. Can you talk about some of the trends that you're seeing and how it's impacting job security?
Yeah, so automation, I mean, there are definitely more experts than I am about automation, but I think there are many jobs that are going to be eliminated because of automation. You see that in retail. And so, it doesn't necessarily mean there aren't going to be jobs in retail, but the skill sets in retail may have to change. And so they may not be a cashier, but they may have to be a coder to figure out how to deal with, using technology for kinds of sales transactions. So I would say, though, for populations that are in a public workforce system, there is a challenge for folks to be able to adjust to changes that are going to be more reliant on technology. And so, with COVID-19, it became apparent that you have challenges around digital technology access, digital literacy, and understanding that technology. And so getting folks that may have those kinds of, I don't want to say deficiencies, but challenges maybe to be able to get to those skills levels so they can advance in the careers that they need. And technology hits many fields. So it's not just about, the IT technology, but you use digital skills in across careers. And so being able to support individuals no matter where they are in that entry point of digital literacy so that they can prepare for those jobs that we're talking about with family sustaining wages is going to require a ecosystem that's responsive, understands that people are at different points in their ability to adapt technology to advancing careers.
Absolutely. And Sheila, I would love for you to jump in here. I know you and I have spent some time, offline just talking about the importance of digital equity and literacy and the transformation that's happening. I know, Sheila, you've been a pioneer in this space. I heard someone ask me the other day, Sheila, are we too late? Is the acceleration so great that it's hard for us to catch up? And I'm wondering just your thoughts and insights on, is it too late? What are some on-ramps to help people catch up? And what do we need to do as an ecosystem to make sure that folks don't get left behind this digital transformation?
Mm-hmm. That's a really great question, Malik. So my gut reaction was, yeah, we're so too late implies that we can't catch up and there's nothing we should do. So I can't adhere to that, but, I sit in government. Are we behind the eight ball? Yeah, we definitely are, right? And we are struggling, right, in a post-COVID environment with budget cuts and budget deficits to really, be able to catch up. If you're asking the question around as a community, right, or as Philadelphians, are we too late? No, we're never too late. I think this in the last 20, 30 years, we've been imbibed in this idea that we do have to learn new tech. No one has a phone they had 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Well, maybe me, but the rest of us do not. But you know what I mean, right? So we've been
Mm-hmm.
imbibed in this idea that we do have to upskill and learn new technology. I think the tragedy, though, is when you look at even cities like Philadelphia, where we still have pockets that don't have broadband access, right? And in the guise of workforce development, because I know that's the take you're making on this, how do you today access that family sustaining wage without digital access? You cannot, right? And so let's deepen that conversation. It's about access, and then it's about digital skills, and then it's about digital literacy, which is a
Mm-hmm.
very different thing. All three levels are required in order for you to effectively engage in the economy that we have going on now. And so, in the COVID has done is just highlighted the fact that we have left a whole swath of the population behind. You've heard me say 25% of households in Philadelphia have no digital access whatsoever, not even a smartphone, right? You've heard me say that the Urban Institute, who we worked with to do that understanding of digital literacy, suspects that 67% of Philadelphians are not digitally literate, right? That does
Mm-hmm.
not mean you have a smartphone and you know how to text your friends. It says, can you use the internet, right, to
Mm-hmm.
develop information, juggle disparate variables, and make cogent decisions as a result of that access? That is a very different thing. And so we've got to move into spaces across the work that we do from adult education on through, right, to all the workforce development programming, ensure that the people that we serve have this set of skills as well as the hard skills or soft skills we've been used to teaching them. So I think we have to move the dime on that most definitely. And no, it's never too late. I've
Thank you.
got to believe that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sheila, for putting that to bed, that it's not too late and we have to do all that we can to help our fellow citizens. Dan, close this block out for us, Dan. We're talking about this idea of a digital divide, and Dan, we know that you have done an amazing job of closing the divide between parts of Jersey and Philadelphia. So close this block out here, Dan, and just talk a little bit about what we can do to make sure that the folks that we serve every day are not left behind by the impacts of automation.
Yeah, and I think it's two things. The first thing about catching up, COVID has shown us one thing is we can do it. We can do it fast if we think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
if you told all these companies 8 months ago that they were going to have to go virtual, it would have taken consultants 10 years to come up with 30 different progress roadmap plans to make it happen, right? Turns out we're doing a pretty incredible job in 7 months, right? Less than that, right? We can do what's important. And if we ask our community and stakeholders to get this done, we will get one result. If we ask them to tell us why it's hard, we will get what we ask for. It is no way too late. But if 8 months from now, we're looking for folks to give us credible excuses at a city council hearing, that is exactly what will be delivered. COVID has shown us that the excuses are garbage. If we feel it's important, if there's a business and civic imperative, we can get it done. We just have to be clear about what we want. Do we want results or do we want excuses? We'll get what we ask for.
Wow, we will get what we ask for. We should start a hashtag, Dan. We could get what we ask for. Thank you for that. So let's, we sort of, Sheila started us and she grounded us in the conversation, and we've talked at a macro level a little bit about sort of the economic recovery and all the great work that you guys are doing to support this work. And now we kind of want to drill down a little bit and talk a little bit about the individual initiatives and programs that you guys are driving in your respective lanes and work. So Shirley, I'm going to throw a question out to you. I know you're doing some amazing work in North Philadelphia and making great strides towards connecting North Philadelphia residents to career pathways. Can you talk to GPlex a little bit about the amazing work you're doing and any lessons learned or insights that you want to share with the community?
Yeah, so I can't say it's just I'm doing. It really is a collective of 20 different organizations. So the Lenfest Foundation charged us with trying to address unemployment in North Philadelphia. And we knew as Temple University that we're not the answer to that problem, that it will take a village to support it. And so we shared the wealth of the Lenfest Foundation among different partners. And so each of them have figured out, you know, what is it that their particular respective community or population they serve is appropriate for them. So Philadelphia Housing Authority is one partner, and they're figuring out that working in the construction trades is important because of the kind of industry that they're in. Project Home is training people to be peer certified specialists and enter the health and human service field. And because they serve many people that are dealing with mental health issues. Another organization is Congreso de Latinos Unidos. They're addressing the issue because they recognize there's a shortage of bilingual health and human service workers. And so they're training folks to be in that way. We do training around community health workers, and we recognize that's something that the hospital, particularly Temple University Hospital, sees as an important career pathway. So those are just a few of the organizations that we support. There's about 11 different projects, and each of them have the idea that there's a niche in their community that can be filled by giving them training leading to careers and employment. So each of those organizations try to even hire within their respective company, so that Project Home is hiring the peer specialist. PHA is putting them in the Section 3 job bank so they can apply for jobs. Temple University is hiring the community health workers. Congreso is using their network of Latinos, Spanish speaking organizations so that they can be placed in those things. So those are among the kind of programs that we're having that really looks at, you know, where is the opportunity for employment? How do we get that training? And how do we make our own investment of hiring those folks for those kinds of positions?
Awesome. And Dan, I'm wondering, I know you're running your ship where you are. As you hear Shirley speak about the great work that she and her partners and collaborators are leading, you know, where do you see alignment? Where do you see similarities in the work that you're doing at your organization? And where do you feel where are some differences and maybe different strategies that you're taking?
Yeah, I think first, and it's really exciting to hear this, I think the first thing is, again, getting back to how do we define if a workforce effort is successful? How many folks have living wage jobs at the end? Not that we had a great curriculum, not that we had a great certification or even an industry recognized credential. Folks, what were they making when they started and what are they making at the end? And what I'm hearing from Shirley and other folks, it's so exciting. It's not just about trying hard, it's about getting folks jobs, and it's not just any job. Let's be clear. If we get folks that are jobs that are not living wage jobs, not only have we not made things better, we've made it worse in some cases because we actually deny their access to benefits that are based on income. And so that is 150% alignment, right? Like that's it. That's the whole thing we have to do. Get folks jobs that are living wage that transform their lives, right? And that's for the whole city. That changes the whole city.
So I see another hashtag, Dan, about hashtag results, because we have to be focused on results. And Sheila, I know that you know, and Sheila, you've mentored a lot of people, emerging leaders, senior leaders, and one of your themes, Sheila, that I know is about execution and results. And Sheila, I like to kind of say that you sort of have had a global view. You know, working in business, working for the city, working at a nonprofit, now working for the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm wondering, Sheila, given that global view, sort of where you sit now, can you talk to our audience a little bit about, from a policy perspective, you know, what kind of prescriptions and solutions at a state level do you see coming down the pike, if you're able to share?
So I can share what, as a deputy, we have been talking about, right? And how are we more responsive, especially given the fact that resources are limited, right? And so a lot of times I think we automatically shift into this world of where we don't have more resources, well, we can't do things. And the reality is that I think there are a lot of policy implementations that I've asked the deputy to start working on. And primarily, I guess the big bucket to think of it in is clarity, right? So I would like to see clarity in service delivery, right? Make sure we understand who we are serving and how we can best serve them. Yes, we have to move to virtual platforms, but if we understand that the folks that we are serving do not have access to those platforms, that cannot be the sole strategy for what we are doing. Clarity in metrics, right? And Malik, you and I have had this conversation, Dan, Shirley, we've all had this conversation where that moment where we're leaning on qualitative data, when we talk about what we did for John, is gone, right? You've got to do your metrics. You've got to measure your performance objectively. You've got to develop systems so you can continually improve based on that information that you have. That day of the workforce development world, nonprofit world, just telling great stories, that's over. That's over. We've got to move impact and effectiveness forward. And the only way to do that is to start thinking intentionally around the work we are doing, setting goals, setting metrics, continually improving, and getting results. That's where we have to go. So that clarity that we bring to it, which is you know, Malik, to your point, I started my career in finance, so I'm always going to think around the bottom line and what we are doing. But it has to be in this particular moment in time where you know, we've been doing good enough, and we have to move it forward. You know, so from a policy perspective, there are things I want to know. I want to know who you're serving and how you're serving. I want to know what barriers you are mitigating with your service, right? I want to understand if the demographics of your organization, right, your training programs, your board of directors are reflective of the community that you serve, right? Dan wants to say something.
Oh, can I just, I like, so you can tell it's like,
go ahead, Dan, jump right in.
I just got to say thank you for saying that, because I just need to be clear. We need to be clear about who the customer of your workforce development program is. If you are reporting heartwarming stories, if you are reporting anecdotal data, your customer is the person of privilege that wants to feel better about themselves. Let's just be clear. If you are reporting hard data about how many serve, percentage success rates, then your customer is the population that you say you're trying to serve. But you can tell a lot about who your customer is by how you talk about your work. And so, Sheila, I just so appreciate that you said that. Like, these heartwarming stories feel great, but it tells you a lot about who you're serving if that's what you're putting out.
Awesome. Wow. Powerful. Go, Shirley, please jump in. Yes, please.
I appreciate this conversation about who we serve, but it's also the people that we unintentionally or intentionally exclude in what we're serving. Like in North Philadelphia, I have some data that Economy League has been doing for us around people with a disability or English language learners and immigrants, and know that they are not part of the proportionally representative in the workforce system. So that challenges to think of how do we not, like, you know, if a person with a disability shows up on our door, how do we accommodate them, versus how does our program intentionally built to serve people with disabilities, whether it's cognitive or physical disabilities, instead of responding to that person that shows up in the door. Like, how are we really being proactive and making sure equity, the buzzword equity,
Right.
I think that for me has been resonating, mostly this year. I mean, it should have been before, but I think it's highlighted this year that, we have to look at our programs and are we really have a policy or programs that are intentionally including folks that are been proportionally disadvantaged in the public workforce system. Only 3% of them show up in CareerLink, but 25% of the 35 to 64-year-olds in North Philadelphia have a disability, but they're only represented 3% in the CareerLink. So there's really a proportional mismatch without the customers we should be serving or want to be served, and whether we are actually doing that work.
Awesome. Well, we're down to our last 5 minutes, team, and I want to make sure in our lightning round that we're a bit more freelance, and you guys can just share any sort of last minute insights that you want to leave with Gplex. But I do want to frame it around sort of just the work of inclusion and equity. And we talked a lot about asking for what we want. We talked about a theme of executing towards results. And as we are doing that as professionals, whether it's government, whether it's higher education, whether it's nonprofit, how do we make sure that as we are executing, that the people that we're serving are not getting left behind? And how do we make sure that we have top of mind just an inclusive agenda, an equity agenda, and we make sure that as we invite people around the table, that we're making sure that it is inclusive of the folks that we endeavor to serve. And so I'm going to just throw it out to the team, and anyone can jump in. And also, I would love to just put to bed, if we can, in the last 5 minutes, the idea that sometimes there's just these large amounts of people who don't want to work. Can we just put that to bed and address that? And from your experience, know that people want to work. People want to roll up their sleeves. They want to do more for their families. They want to, take care of an elderly parent. They want to send their child to school. We know that the people we serve want to work. So can we just address that and put that to bed as well in this last segment?
You want to do that in 5 minutes? Right. So I'll just address the first part, right? My one thing I would put on the table here is that when you start thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organizations, I think what's needed is to move from a should to a must. Right? We behave very differently for things that we must do, as opposed to the things that are nice to do, we should do, we'll do when we get time, right? Malik, I shared with you a while back, I was doing something for the Economic Inclusion Cabinet, and they were asking me about diversification of the construction skilled trades. And I'm not picking on construction, right? But I pulled an article from the New York Times, headline 1971, that said in 25 years we'll have a diversified construction skill trades, right? Because it was a should do, not a must do. And I think when things move to must, we measure, to Dan's point, effectively, and we make forward progression and we measure our progression, right? But when it should do, we'll get to it one day. That's over.
Can I just jump in? I think the one thing when I hear folks say that, young people, that's what don't want to work. Actually, that means they don't want to work for you at the wages you're paying. I mean, I'm saying a young person doesn't want to work just because my workplace is full of microaggressions. I'm paying them $9 an hour and I expect them to be grateful every moment. These folks have a bad attitude. The problem in that story is not the attitude. And, I mean, we're doing a pitch competition where we're giving away $10,000 to young entrepreneurs at HopeWorks. Oh, we got hustle. We got hard work. And these are young people building the workplace they want to work in. If you find that folks don't want to work, the problem probably isn't the folks that aren't coming to your company. And I think that's something we have to be transparent about.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, Shirley, close us out.
I have nothing to add to what Dan and Sheila said. I mean, I think they said it all, Malik.
Okay. Well, we have actually 2 more minutes in this segment. So Shirley, Dan, Sheila, is there anything, any other message that you want to leave with our Gplex community before we close this out?
I would say one thing, right? as we're having these conversations, we tend to focus on, what's wrong, why
Mm,
we're not making movement, what we need to do. But I want to say this, right? Oftentimes in our life, we don't have this level of crisis, um, so people don't move.
Mm,
But we weren't having these conversations, and we weren't talking about these hard issues, and we weren't thinking about it as except in the ways that we used to. So here's a real opportunity, right, to recreate our own realities. It's an opportunity to shift fundamentally the way we do business, because at least we're in the rooms and having the conversations. I mean, in some ways, this is the silver lining to the whole thing.
mm,
That stuff that was already going on. There's nothing new going on here, right? Now is being brought to the forefront of the conversation. And for me, it feels like a glorious moment because I think together we can really recreate what it looks like. This whole idea of us, American society is based on this idea of hope.
mm.
Hope that we can move in the direction that we need to move in. Hope that we can be a more equitable society. Hope that we can level the playing field so that everybody can bring their talents to the table. And I think that's what this moment represents. And it would be a crime of our generation to let it go without seeing some real movement.
I
That's
would,
my two cents.
thank you, Sheila. My closing remark in that hope, it really does take a village. So it's the public workforce system and the workforce development, but employers need to be at the table with the wages that we're talking about, that Dan's talking about. So good employers, the workforce development system, the service providers in collaboration with the people that we're seeing, it has to be a collective and collaborative approach to it all.
Dan, any last remarks?
I am terrified to follow those two. That was the stuff.
Well, Dan, you're the
That's exactly.
connective tissue because they both
Yes.
talked about hope. And so your hope works, Dan. I mean,
Oh,
Dan,
geez. Oh, that was a miss. That was a miss. You're right. Oh, geez. I could have branded the heck out
I
of
mean,
that.
I threw the alley oop for you, Dan. Hope
Man,
works.
that was like
you know?
a layup you threw me and I dropped it. Really. I'm so sorry.
But anyway, so let me give a very big thank you to Sheila Ireland, to Dan Rhoton, to Shirley Moy. Thank you so much to Witty Gritty for helping to bring this together, and a big thank you to the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia for bringing us all together to talk about workforce and to talk about what we can do to help aid in the recovery of our great city and our great region. So with that, I am going to say thank you, and we will see you on one of the GPlex sessions. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.